Spurgeon here with RevZilla, and in this video we are going to break down the best advanced sport bike modifications that you can make to your motorcycle. Now, perhaps you've seen our track day video and you're inspired. You want to go out, you want to try a track day, or maybe you have a few track days already under your belt and you're trying to eke out a little bit more performance out of your bike. Well, in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to break down the best modifications that you can make to really get that last level of performance out of your machine if you're out there riding a sport bike either aggressively on the street or you are taking it to the track. Now, we're going to use our Ninja 400 as our example bike, and that's because this bike is relatively a clean slate. It's a beginner bike that really benefits from a lot of added upgrades in a lot of different areas, and we're going to walk you through everything we did to this motorcycle. But keep in mind that as you're watching this video, this is not a be-all to end-all list. This is something that's more of a curated list of suggestions that you're going to have to take into play to see what applies to your unique motorcycle. Now, if you're having trouble figuring out which parts are right for your bike, all you have to do is plug in your bike's information into our bike finder at RevZilla.com, and it'll give you a full list of available parts that'll work for your unique bike. Now, we are going to break this down into four main sections. We're going to kick things off by talking about performance. We're then going to move on to braking, ergonomics, and finally protection. And as always, if you've never seen our videos before, we're going to discuss the Beard scale of difficulty so you know exactly what to expect when you're installing these individual pieces. And that's going to be done on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being easiest, 3 being something that's really going to be a more difficult install. So let's kick things off right now by breaking down the performance upgrades that we tackled for the Ninja 400. Now, if you're interested in making a performance modification to your motorcycle, but you're limited by budget, and there's only one thing you can change, it's almost always going to be best to start with suspension because you can really make some huge gains in your performance by swapping out worn-out suspension components. Or in our case, with the Ninja 400, it wasn't that the suspension was bad, it was just a budget suspension and it had no adjustability other than a preload collar at the rear, and it wasn't set up for my rider weight. So we went ahead and I upgraded to a full Olean suspension, and that really allowed me to fine-tune the springs to accommodate my rider weight, and I now have full adjustability at the front and the rear. Out back, I went with an STX shock that gave me preload as well as compression and rebound adjustments, and then up front, same thing. I went with the NIX 22 cartridge kit, and I now have adjustments for preload as well as compression and rebound damping. Now, from an install perspective, it was a bit of a heavier lift. With the STX shock in the back, it was a 2 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty, and a lot of that is just because you can't use a regular paddock stand. You have to jack the bike up from underneath. To do that, you have to pull the fairings out of the way. So it was a bit of a time-consuming lift. So that's something that you probably only want to tackle if you have the right tools to do it. And then when we were taking a look at the cartridge kits up front, that's a full 3 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty. Definitely need specialty tools. You have to remove the whole front end of the bike. You have to get in there. You have to know what you're doing. Now, the instructions do a good job of walking you through, but if you're not feeling confident, that is definitely one that you should consider taking to a full Olean shop and let them tackle the job for you. And the benefit there is getting this stuff installed is only half the battle. You need to also make sure that once it's on there, you then set it up for your sag, as well as then fine-tune those compression and rebound settings. And if you take it to a shop, they can help you with that process. So you'll also notice, if you're looking in that back section of the motorcycle, that those tires are not stock. Those are the new Dunlop Q3 Plus tires. And really, if you're looking at your stock rubber that came on your motorcycle, that's a great tire in most cases for just riding around on a Sunday afternoon on the street. But stock rubber is not necessarily the rubber you want to use if you start riding more aggressively. So we went ahead and we upgraded the tires. And the beauty about the Q3 Plus is there's a wide range of sizes. So they work perfectly for the Ninja. But I've used these bad boys on the track with a BMW S1000RR already for California Superbike School. And I was extremely pleased with the way they performed. Now, from an install perspective, we'll call this a 2 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty. Most people are going to take your tires somewhere to get installed for you. I would say at the very minimum, what I like to do is actually take the wheels off and just take the wheels to get my tires swapped out. That usually saves me a few dollars. If you don't even want to bother with that, you can always just drop the bike off at the shop and have them throw a new set of skins on there for you. Now, you'll also notice if you're looking at that rear tire, this exhaust is not stock. We went ahead and we installed a full system aero exhaust on this, and we did it for 2 reasons. One, we dropped weight. We lost about 7 pounds off of this motorcycle, and we gained power back. We gained about 4 to 5 horsepower across the rev range by adding a full system exhaust. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for a bike that only makes about 43, 44 horsepower stock, that's roughly a 10% increase in power. That's a pretty big deal. Now, the one thing to note with this, when we're talking about the install, is you can't just go ahead and throw a full system on here. You're gonna have to go ahead then pull the tank off, put a high performance air filter in it, and then we went ahead and we also threw a Dynajet kit in here as well. We put a power commander on to be able to regulate the fueling. So it's not just one without the other, you have to do the whole thing, and that's gonna bump that to a 2 out of 3 on the beard scale difficulty for the install for this. That and the fact that you gotta pull the fairings off, for a lot of you out there on multi-cylinder bikes, it just becomes a much more complicated process. So that is going to wrap up the performance section. We now get to jump into brakes. Now when it comes to braking, there's no easier or faster or simpler way to improve brake feel than simply throwing in a new set of pads. And for this bike, we went with an EBC double H sintered pad. And for the majority of riders out there, this is a great place to start over your stock pads. What you get is a bit more aggression out of the initial bite and less fade over time. Now, if you want something more aggressive, you want to take a step up over the regular standard double H sintered, that's where you could check out the EPFA road race pad. Now, this is a very aggressive street pad, really focused on the track, but it does not eliminate your comfortable use or your legal use on the street. So just keep that in mind. Everything that we're really talking about here is focused on maintaining streetability of the motorcycle while gaining performance on the track. And this is really the highest level pad you can go before you get into track-only pads. Really great, strong initial bite, very aggressive, and much less fade over time, so a much more consistent feel as you begin to turn multiple laps. Now, speaking of reduced fade from your brakes, you'll notice that we've also upgraded the Ninja's brake lines to a steel braided line. The Ninja originally came with rubber hoses, and those over time, they begin to flex, they begin to move. So we upgraded those, we went to steel braided lines, and that helps to really improve consistency and feel as you're turning multiple sessions out there on the racetrack. Now, from an install perspective, brake pads are super simple. They are a 1 out of 3 on our beard scale of difficulty. Pretty much anybody out there can do it. On the Ninja 400, 15 minutes for each rotor, so about 30 minutes said and done. If you're running a dual disc setup on the front, factor in another 15 minutes and you'll be good to go in under an hour for a brake pad install. When it comes to the lines, however, much more complicated process. We are going to call that a 2 out of 3 on our beard scale of difficulty. And keep in mind, this is going to vary greatly depending on the type of motorcycle you have and whether or not you have ABS. Because with the ABS module, it adds an extra layer of complexity to it. And in some cases, you're going to have to take your bike back to the dealership and have them hook up a computer to reboot the entire ABS system. So just keep that in mind. It becomes more complicated when you get up into swapping out those brake lines. Now, the final modification that we made that relates to the brake feel is going to be the lever. We replaced the stock brake lever with an ASV lever, and it's fully adjustable. This means I get to put that lever exactly where I want it, and that's going to help me improve my feel. I'm going to be confident in knowing that the lever is going to be exactly where I want it every time, and that's also going to speak to ergonomics, which is actually the next section that we're going to get into right now. All right, so we've now come to ergonomics, and ergonomics is really just the idea that you want to set the bike up for your rider type so you can fine-tune exactly where all of your controls are going to sit. And the more comfortable you are with where your controls are, the more aggressive you can ride because you start to build confidence, and with that confidence becomes speed. And that's really what we want to get you to. So when we're taking a look at the ASV levers that we were just talking about, this has been a big complaint for me on a lot of bikes. You've probably seen some of my reviews where I talk about adjustable levers. I really like the levers to sit exactly where I want them on my hand. And what I like about the ASVs is I can fine-tune the fitment on the fly to get the lever to be exactly where I want it to. And they're also super easy to install. So I was able to install these in a matter of minutes using simple hand tools. Really no surprises there. Now you will notice that these levers are mounted to perches, and those perches are actually mounted to a new clip-on setup. This is going to be a Woodcraft clip-on. It brings it down about 1 inch and about 1 inch forward over stock, and what that does is it really helps me with my body position when I get out into the track with my motorcycle. Now, the other thing that I really like about the Woodcrafts is that everything is replaceable. So the stock option on this and the stock option on most bikes is one solid piece. So if you go down when you're out there on the track and you break something off, you're pretty much up creek without a paddle. What's really cool about this is because they mount in a way that don't require you to take off the top triple tree, you can actually replace anything out there on the fly, whether it's just the tube and you just slide a new one in, or if you do have to remove the mount, you can do so without having to take the entire top tree off. So it's a really innovative design that we don't always see from other manufacturers. Now the install for this, relatively simple once again. A 1 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty. Simple hand tools, a few Allen wrenches, and you'll be set to go. Now, you'll notice as I'm kind of leaned over in this position and I sit back up, I'm using a lot of my core muscles to lock my body into place. And I'm digging my knees into the tank because I've got stomp grip tape all on the inside of this. Now, we talked about grip tape on the previous versions of the Sportbike mods, but what I really like about these tank pads is they're a much more aggressive design. The stomp grip stuff really allows me to dig my knees in and get a nice tight feel on the tank, and it's something that I really add to a lot of my bikes if I'm going to ride them aggressively. Now, the final thing you'll note down there is that my big old clod hoppers are sitting on Woodcraft rear sets, and those Woodcraft rear sets do a bunch of different things. First and foremost, they give me more ground clearance. They sit about an inch taller and about an inch further back than my stock pegs are going to, and they also allow for maximum adjustability. So I can raise them up and lower them down about an inch in either direction. I can move them forward, move them back, and then I can also fine tune exactly where the brake and the shift pedal are going to sit. So I can really fine tune how I engage with those controls. And again, every individual piece is going to be replaceable. So much like those clip-ons that we talked about, if I do go down and I break something off, I can replace just that part. So Woodcraft does a really good job of being really thoughtful about their design for the fact that, you know, accidents happen and people do go down the track. Now, for our BSD, our Beard scale difficulty, this is a slightly heavier install. It is a 2 out of 3, and we're going to call it a 2 out of 3 because you need to make sure you have some Loctite handy. There's 2 different sides to install there, so it's more time consuming. Once it is installed, you got to fine tune where everything fits. And then lastly, to make sure that this stays compliant with street legality, there is a brake light switch that you have to get, and that is going to allow for functionality for your rear brake light. So just some things to think about as you're putting that kit together. Now, the final point to note is that I've removed the passenger pegs from this bike. If you remember my original review for the Ninja 400, as well as, you know, the problem that I have with quite a few bikes is that my heel ends up smashing into either the exhaust or the passenger peg. So by removing those, I no longer have that problem, and I can really get down in my position. I can ride on the tops of my feet, and I no longer feel like my heel's kicking out. Now, to do that, because the exhaust actually hangs off the passenger peg, I got this R&G relocation hanger kit, and it allows me to remove the passenger peg while still maintaining a place to hang the exhaust. Simple modification, but it's something that really helps you out, especially if you have larger feet and you find yourself banging your heels into that exhaust and you can't get that body position you're looking for. So that's going to wrap up ergonomics. I do want to quickly touch on protection, so let's dive into that right now. So this isn't the first time you've heard us talk about protection for your sport bike. In the original Sport Bike mods video, we talked about frame sliders. In the naked Sport Bike mods video, we talked about engine case covers. And in this advanced Sport Bike mods video, we're just shoving them both together because you want to maximize protection when you're taking it out there and you're pushing it to the limit on the racetrack. Now, the Shogun frame slider that we utilized here is a no-cut kit, so there's really no mods you have to do to the actual fairings, but you do have to remove those to be able to install them. And then for the GB racing covers, super easy. I mean, 4 bolts, you pull them out, you put the new bolts in, and you're set to go. So both of these are going to be a 1 out of 3 on our Beard scale of difficulty. Really easy install items on both pieces. And that right there, my friends, is going to wrap up our advanced sport bike mods video. We've pretty much taken you right to the edge of what you can do to modify a sport bike, just shy of turning this into a dedicated track machine. And remember, the whole point of this was we wanted to keep the street functionality so you can use your bike on the street as well as taking it to the racetrack. Now, if you liked what you saw here and you want to keep up with all the content that we have rolling out at RevZilla, you want to make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get notifications for all the videos as they get released. And as always, head over to Common Tread so you can keep up with all the articles that we have rolling out as well. I want to thank you for joining us for this look at the best advanced sport bike mods for your motorcycle. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.